in the dark every night. What started out as interest turned into an obsession. Some people wanted to heal, others wanted to control, and still others wanted to know what would happen in the future. The Watchers wanted it to happen, and each spell added more and more corruption to the world. Along with the spells came the knowledge of the stars. Simjaza opened the scrolls of the skies and showed men and women how to read the stars, follow the paths of the sun and moon, and write their destinies on the stars. The stars had always amazed the people, so they were enchanted. But now they thought that the patterns above controlled their lives and that their choices were already made before they could act. Instead of listening to their creator, they looked to faraway lights for answers, thinking they were in charge of their own fate when they were really just tied to chains they couldn't see. The women also learned things that were beautiful on the outside but had dark sides. The Watchers told them secrets about how to dress up, how to use stones and metals to make themselves shine, how to mix colors into their eyes, how to dye their hair, and how to make ornaments that caught everyone's eye. They taught them how to change their looks, how to use beauty like a weapon, soft but sharp. At first, it seemed harmless, even fun. Seeing one's reflection change was a joy. But soon, beauty became a hunger of its own, a trap set for hearts. Desire grew, jealousy spread, and innocence faded behind layers of painted faces and decorated bodies. What used to be natural now had a heavy weight of temptation, making everyone uneasy. At first, the corruption spread slowly. It was easier for a village with swords to defend itself. People admired a woman who wore a lot of jewelry. Reading the stars made a man feel smarter. But soon, these things turned into a storm that couldn't be stopped. Weapons were used for both defense and conquest. Beauty brought not only admiration but also lust, jealousy, and betrayal. People who heard secret whispers of enchantments didn't get wiser. They got scared and crazy. Corruption spread like roots digging deep into the ground, hidden from view until it broke through the surface and choked everything in its way. Kids grew up knowing about violence. They saw their fathers take swords to the fields and their mothers paint their faces with powders that sparkled like dust from the sky. They listened to chants at night that echoed through the air. They didn't know what the words meant, but they could feel their power. What the Watchers taught became normal and a part of everyday life for many generations. People forgot that they didn't own this information in the first place. It felt as natural as breathing, even though it came from rebellion and led to decay. The Watchers were happy with what they saw in the world, and their hearts swelled with pride. They saw men killing each other with iron, women getting attention with decorations, and communities ruled by signs in the sky and voices in the dark. It was as if they had changed the world to look like them and changed people to reflect their rebellion. They used to love how beautiful creation was, but now they loved how it was twisted. Their laughter echoed through the night like sounds from the mountains, a hollow sound that made those who still remembered purity feel sad. But not everyone was blind. Some people cried as they saw the change happen. They saw how quickly greed grew, how quickly innocence died, and how the earth itself seemed tired from all the corruption. They whispered prayers that went up to the sky and cries that the wind carried to the one who had not left them, even though his silence was heavy. They wanted to be clean, to start over, and to go back to the days before people whispered secrets into each other's ears. But the noise of blades, the cries of desire, and the chants of forbidden knowledge drowned out their voices. Corruption didn't spread like a sudden storm. It spread like a slow poison that many people didn't notice until it was too late. People walked deeper into the shadows, guided by hands that had once been bright with heavenly light, but now glowed with defiance. The Watchers had given gifts, but those gifts had thorns, and soon the world was bleeding under them. The weight of the earth made it groan. The garden that used to be full of life now seemed full of sadness, and the soil itself held memories of blood. Every drop that hit the ground seemed to soak into its heart, leaving a stain that no amount of rain could wash away. The cries of those who suffered didn't go away. They hung in the air like restless winds through the valleys, echoing off the mountains and creeping into the stillness of the night. It was as if creation itself had become a witness, unable to look away from the violence that was spreading across its face. The giants' footsteps shook the ground as they walked across the land. They were huge and strong. People were amazed at first by how tall and strong they were. They looked like living miracles, as if stories had come to life. But soon, wonder turned into fear. They weren't hungry like men are. It was huge, never-ending, and impossible to satisfy. They ate up the crops that were meant for villages, ripped apart herds of cattle, and when the land could no longer fill their bellies, they turned their attention to people. Families who used to get together at night in peace were now afraid of footsteps coming toward them in the dark. The cries of the oppressed grew louder because no one could stand up to beings that powerful. Men with iron swords found that their weapons broke like brittle branches against the strength of the giants. Mothers held their children close and prayed for their safety, even though the heavens seemed quiet. People talked in hushed tones about villages that were swallowed whole in a single night and fields that were stripped bare as if a storm had come through. But it wasn't storm winds that left emptiness behind, it was giant hands. Each story that was told added to the sadness of the earth, and the ground below them seemed to drink deeply of despair. The giants ruled not only with hunger but also with violence. Their hands were heavy with cruelty, and they used their power to make others do what they wanted. As they walked, the laws of mercy faded and were replaced by fear. People who were above him could kill him with one careless blow, not for any crime, but for their own entertainment. Laughter rang out at pain, like thunder that broke hearts instead of the sky. People became as weak as blades of grass that were stepped on, unable to fight back against those who stood like mountains in front of them. But there was more than despair in the sadness of men and women. Their pain gave voice to prayers that rose to the sky like smoke. The heart of the earth took in every cry of pain and every whisper of grief, and it seemed like the ground itself was carrying it up. The old texts say that the earth cried out, as if it were more than just stone and soil. It was a living witness that could no longer stay quiet. The blood that was poured on the earth made it groan, and its cry went up to the Creator of all. Kids learned to be afraid before they learned to be calm. They heard stories as they grew up about shadows that were taller than trees, giants that came at night, and families that were lost and scattered. Their laughter was quiet, and their games were over. There wasn't much room for innocence in a world ruled by violence. Elders who used to tell stories of beauty and beginnings now spoke in low voices about how to survive and warned the young about footsteps that shook the ground. Hope seemed to fade away, as if it had been eaten too. Yet, even in the brokenness, there was a desire for justice that could not be silenced. It seemed like the land itself changed. Rivers that used to sing softly now ran heavy with red, and their waters were cloudy with the cost of being cruel. The birds in the forests stopped singing, as if even the wild animals could feel the shadow pressing down on them. The sky looked dimmer, not because there wasn't enough sun, but because of the weight of the world. The song of humanity, which used to be in harmony with creation, now trembled in sadness, out of tune and broken. Some people remembered what the earth used to be like and walked through fields, whispering prayers into the ground and asking it to remember peace. Their voices mixed with the cries of the oppressed to make a lament that could not be stopped. It was a song of grief that rose every day and every night until it seemed like everyone in the world was singing the same sad song. The earth itself, tired of carrying the weight of blood, raised its cry higher than any human voice could reach, sending sorrow to the ears of the one who made it. And even though the watchers were happy with what they had done and the giants roared with power, there was an undercurrent that they couldn't stop. Every cry of pain, every prayer said through tears, and every drop of blood that fell to the ground became part of a bigger voice, a never-ending call for justice. Every act of cruelty made it stronger, and it wove through the fabric of creation until even the stars above seemed to shake with its sound. The heavens were still, but that doesn't mean they weren't there. Someone heard the cries of the earth and didn't forget them. The giants kept walking, their hunger not satisfied and their cruelty not stopped. But the ground that shook with fear was also sending its voice up as they walked. People who lived under oppression felt small and helpless in front of big people, but their sadness didn't go away. The earth itself saw it happen, and every cry rose like incense, carried by unseen winds to the throne of the one who sees everything. The world seemed to be covered in darkness, but the cry of the earth went on, unbroken and unrelenting, waiting for an answer. When the earth groaned under the weight of the giant's cruelty and the heavy veil of suffering, a figure appeared who seemed almost out of this world. Enoch was not a warrior and did not want to be a king. He walked quietly on the ground, and his heart was in tune with the still, eternal rhythm of heaven, not the chaos around him. His purity wasn't stiff. It was a living gentleness, a kind of soft light that seemed to come from inside. Enoch lived in a world where men were afraid of the powerful, and the earth's soil was stained with blood. He was different from everyone else because his life was open to the voice of the eternal. His days were not filled with loud speeches, but with long, quiet walks where his thoughts rose like incense to heaven, and his soul was drawn into a communion that few could understand. The old texts say that he walked with God. That simple phrase has a lot of meaning that makes you think. To walk with God means to live in peace with a presence that is not seen, but is very real. Picture a calm morning with dew still on the grass and a man walking slowly next to someone he can't see. Words aren't necessary because the communion is deeper than words. Enoch did things that way. He lived in a world full of rebellion, but he had the smell of a different world inside him, one that wasn't tainted by it. This purity wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of strength in a different way. The giants took what they wanted by force, and the watchers turned knowledge into weapons. Enoch's strength was that he could listen. He heard the cries of men and women who were broken by being oppressed. He could feel the earth groaning under the weight of violence. He also heard the voice of heaven, which was soft and steady, and called him to be a messenger between two worlds. He was not blind to the pain around him, and he was not separate from it. Instead, it seemed like his heart held both heaven's sadness and hope, mixing them into a compassion that couldn't stay quiet. This ability to understand others made him stand out. Enoch didn't just condemn the fallen angels for what they did, even though their actions had hurt creation. He thought it was sad that celestial beings' brilliance was dimmed by desire and pride. He didn't just see rebels when he saw them tied up by their own choices. He also saw people who had strayed far from their intended purpose. He had two views, one of grief for their corruption and one of sorrow for the people who were crushed by it. It was a miracle that he could hold both in his heart without giving in to despair. Stories say that both loyal and fallen angels saw something different in him. Loyal people saw him as a reliable messenger, someone who could carry messages without letting his own goals get in the way. The fallen ones, in a darker way, saw him as a reflection of what they had lost. They were both afraid of him and respected him because his purity reminded them of the light they had lost. Enoch was not swayed by praise or scared of power. His mere presence was a subtle condemnation of corruption, but it was also an invitation to redemption. The Book of Enoch tells the story of how he was chosen to be a scribe, which is not something that even the fallen angels would come to him when they were sad. Once they were shining in the light of heaven, but now they were trapped in the shadows of regret and begged him for help. They asked him to speak up for them and bring their request to the Eternal. He was sad that they were rebelling, but he didn't turn them away. His compassion didn't make their actions right, but it did let him be a witness to their suffering, a man who could bear the weight of their cries without giving in. This wasn't weakness, it was strength. It takes a lot of courage to carry the sadness of both heaven and earth without closing one's heart. Even now, in the quiet hours of night, Enoch's story speaks to us. It reminds us that purity is not being alone, but being deeply in tune with both suffering and hope. It shows us that even in a world full of greed and violence, one person who is in tune with heaven can carry messages that last for generations. He didn't live his life in loudness. He lived it in quiet faithfulness. And from that silence came words and images that changed the way people thought for centuries. In the silence of heaven, where light flows without shadows and eternity hums like a huge, unbroken chord, a deep sadness came over me. The Eternal, whose gaze reaches every part of creation, looked down on the earth and saw the violence that was destroying it. What had once been good and peaceful was now broken and poisoned by greed and desire. The cries of the innocent rose like smoke. The blood of the helpless stained the ground, and rebellion had broken the harmony of creation. It wasn't just anger, it was sadness. For the Creator, who had woven the fabric of life with care and love, it was painful to see how it had been torn by those who had been given more wisdom and power. Heaven's sadness was like a big, heavy tide that spilled into eternity itself. The fallen ones not only went against their place, but they also changed the world for the worse. Giants stomped on the weak, their hunger never ending, and their presence was like storms ripping through weak villages. Fear weighed down men and women who used to live in peace. Knowledge, which was supposed to be kept in balance and shared at certain times, had been turned into tools of oppression. The Watchers had thrown people into a web of vanity, war, and illusion instead of helping them understand more. The Eternal didn't see this from a distance. He felt like a father watching his children make mistakes that would ruin their lives. But sadness was not alone. It gave rise to the strength of justice. The Creator is not just love, He is also order. The laws that govern creation cannot be broken without consequences. As the cries of the oppressed filled heaven, judgment began to stir, solemn and inevitable. The quiet time was coming to an end. The angels in heaven who had been watching with steady hearts were now waiting for the word that would set them in motion. There was a holy tension in the air while they waited, like the calm before a storm that was full of power but held back. The Eternal's command came through, not with the noise of shouting, but with the weight of eternal power. People said names, and those names called forth destinies to act. Michael, the great defender, whose very presence was a shield of goodness. Gabriel, the messenger of God's will, whose voice echoed the command of heaven. Raphael, the healer, who brings healing and mercy even when he judges. And Uriel, the light of God, who brought clarity to places of confusion and shadow and shone a light on mysteries. When the Eternal gave the command, each archangel, shining with power but humble in obedience, bowed their heads. Michael was given the job of fighting corruption's power. He wasn't supposed to talk. He was supposed to hit people and tie up those whose strength had become a plague on the earth. The giants, who were full of themselves, would face the unbreakable strength of heaven's warrior. He would not use weapons made by rebels, but the unbreakable power of heaven itself. Michael would put an end to the fear that giants caused. His footsteps would sound like thunder, and his hand would strike the strong like lightning. Gabriel, the messenger, was sent to talk to both the faithful and the fallen and make decisions about them. His words were not just sounds, they were vibrations that changed reality. When Gabriel spoke, the world changed. He brought with him the sadness of heaven, turned into orders, telling the Watchers that they were going to die. He had to remind them that their choices had consequences that they couldn't escape, and that their rebellion had set them on a path they couldn't change. He had to bear witness, and his voice was both a warning and a final declaration. Raphael, whose name means God heals, was told to move not to destroy, but to clean. Azazel's corruption had spread like poison, getting into every part of human life. Raphael's job was to tie up Azazel, throw him into darkness, and clean up the mess that his teachings had left on the earth. His role was a paradox. He was a seed of mercy in the shadow of judgment. Healing could start once the corrupter was gone. His work was not just punishment, it was also restoring balance and washing wounds that had bled for too long. Then Uriel came, and his presence was as bright as the sun. He was the one who showed what was hidden, taking off the veil of lies and showing what was underneath. He was supposed to warn Noah, a good man in his time, and show him the way to stay alive during the flood of judgment. Uriel's job was both scary and sweet. He brought God's light into the darkest time in human history, making sure that hope would not die. While others brought chains and proclamations, he brought revelation, making it possible for people to survive in the midst of destruction. The archangels didn't hesitate when they got their orders. They obeyed right away because they had no will of their own, only the Eternal's. But even in their determination, you can see how serious their hearts were. They knew how terrible what was about to happen would be. In the light of heaven, they had once stood next to these fallen brothers and sisters and sung with them in choirs that filled all of time with harmony. Seeing them now on their way to judgment made the loss feel heavy. But following love meant following justice, because love can't let corruption eat away at everything. The archangels got ready, and the heavens moved. Their light was like living fire across the sky. The stars seemed to shake, as if they knew that acts of divine authority were about to restore the balance of creation. The word of the Eternal shook the air of eternity with its serious power. What had been okay for a while would no longer be okay. The Watcher's great rebellion had come to an end, and the judgment order could not be changed. Shadows grew deeper on the ground. Giants roared through valleys, not knowing that their time was running out. Even though they were proud, the Watchers still tried to get power, even though they may have felt a tremor of fear in their hearts, knowing what was going to happen. People, tired and beaten down, kept crying out, not knowing that their prayers had already reached the throne and started the biggest act of cleansing since the beginning of time. When judgment came, the Eternal's sadness did not go away. It stayed, like a soft sound under the power of justice. But in that sadness was a strong hope that new life could come from the ashes of corruption, and that a new harmony could come from the silence after destruction. The end of the story was not judgment, but the painful step that would lead to restoration. The archangels were moving, and the world itself seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the clash of heaven's order against the evil that had tainted creation. Azazel was different from the others. He was a presence that burned with the fire of defiance instead of the light of heaven. He wasn't the first person to think about rebellion, but he became its leader, its voice, and its example. Semjaza led the oath on Mount Hermon, but Azazel took the rebellion to its darkest end. He was proud not only of his height and intelligence, but also of the fact that he thought he could change the world to fit his vision. He walked among the Watchers as a leader, not just a follower. He taught them to not only look at people, but to shape them, corrupt them, and turn them into something very different from the innocence they once had. His voice was smooth and convincing, and it had a confidence that seemed unbreakable. When he was around, weaker hearts faltered, and his words struck a chord with their desires. Azazel's biggest crime wasn't just wanting power, it was how he led others to their deaths. He taught men how to fight and gave them weapons to use against people who had once worked the land in peace. He taught people how to shed blood as if it were a necessary part of staying alive by sharpening blades where there used to be plows. Women used to dress simply, but now they wear painted faces, jewelry, and charms. Their beauty is no longer a sign of innocence. It is a trap. Secrets that were meant to stay hidden in the eternal order of creation were brought out too soon, ripped from their place, and given to people like sparks on dry grass. At first, they didn't seem dangerous. In fact, they might have been good. But the sparks turned into flames, and soon those flames burned up whole generations. What set Azazel apart was not just what he taught, but the spirit behind it. He was proud of everything he did. He loved to see men fight with swords he had taught them how to make, as if their violence were his own glory. He loved to see the fall of innocence, like when women put on charms to seduce men and families fell apart because of greed and vanity. He acted like he was above the law, as if the laws of the eternal did not apply to him. He ruled the fallen with fear and influence like a king without a throne. His power came not only from what he gave, but also from how he changed hearts. He didn't lead with chains, he led with whispers that turned into obsessions. His name was on the destruction that spread across the earth. The cries of blood that came from the ground were like the things he taught. Azazel's hand could be seen at the center of it all. When giants roamed and ate everything they could reach, when men turned on each other with sharp weapons, and when vanity took away simplicity and left only hunger for more. He had not only broken the link between heaven and earth, he had stomped on it and made fun of it. He didn't keep his rebellion a secret. It was loud, open, and without shame. He became the personification of corruption, showing how beauty and wisdom could turn into pride and destruction. Heaven couldn't stay still. The archangels who heard the Eternal's order had a special job to do with Azazel. His name stood out among the fallen because his evil had become a wound on the world that could only heal if he was removed. Raphael had the important job of tying Azazel's hands and feet together, throwing him into the dark, and covering him with sharp stones so that he would stay locked up until the day of final judgment. It wasn't a quiet order. It was a loud one that echoed across the sky. Azazel, who thought he was too proud to be touched, would now be touched by the heavy hand of judgment. His power would be broken, and no one would be able to hear him. The picture of his fall is heavy and stays with me. He used to walk around the watchers with pride, but now chains made by heaven would wrap around his arms and legs. He used to teach men how to make swords, but now the sharp rocks of a barren wasteland would be his prison. His eyes, which had looked at the world with greed, would now only see darkness. His voice, which had spread evil like a disease, would echo into nothingness, and no one would hear it. The Eternal's judgment against him was final. It was not just punishment, it was a message to all of creation that pride and rebellion would not go unpunished. Azazel's fate became a warning carved into the very structure of time. No matter how high one climbs in arrogance, the descent into judgment is certain. There is still a sense of sadness in this. The Eternal did not make Azazel to destroy him. He used to be bright, full of wisdom and glory. His pride chose his fall, not the other way around. That choice pulled other people with him, breaking up harmony and causing a lot of pain in many people's lives. Heaven was sad not just because of what he had done, but also because of who he had become, a shadow of the light he once carried. His time in jail, Azazel's fall into judgment, was different from any other fall. The Eternal had written his name down, and the cries of the earth had carved his deeds into stone. When the decree was spoken, even the heavens seemed to shake. The order Raphael got wasn't light or easy to follow. It was a command that would echo through time and keep pride in a dark place. He was put in prison in Dudael, a wild and empty area. It wasn't a normal place. It was a realm of silence, jaggedness, and fire that burned without going out. It was away from the paths of men, set aside as a place of judgment where the one who had ruined the earth would meet his end. The picture of his prison cell is full of poetry and fear. Dudael's ground was not smooth, it was sharp and wild, with rocks sticking up like teeth from the earth's jaws. The air was dry, thick, and hot. Canyons cut through the land, and their depths were always in the dark. Here, Azazel was led in chains made by heaven's command. No earthly or spiritual power could break these chains. His hands, which had taught men how to make swords, were tied up. His feet, which had proudly walked across the earth, were chained up, and his voice, which had once been so powerful, was silenced by the weight of judgment. The stones that covered him were not placed there gently. They were thrown with force. and the sharp edges pressed into his body. Each rock that sealed him was like a sentence, a reminder of the blood that had been shed and the innocence that had been taken. They kept piling on top of him until he could no longer see the bright sky. In the cracks of the stone, a fire burned softly, flickering with an otherworldly glow. It didn't go out or eat anything. It was a flame meant to remind, not destroy. It was the fire of justice, an eternal ember that reflected the corruption he had spread. Now it burned around his prison as if creation, its elf, were testifying against him. There was a lot of silence in this place. It wasn't the quiet of peace or rest. It was a hollow quiet that weighed heavily on the soul. No birds sang, no water flowed, and no wind blew. The chains only rattled when he moved, and the pit around him quickly swallowed the sound. Azazel, who had once been at the center of the rebellion, was now alone and only heard the sound of his own thoughts. Dudale's silence was his new friend, and it seemed to go on forever, just like the measure of his pride that was laid bare before him. For those who can picture it, the scene has a dreamlike quality, like a story told in the dark. A lonely person is buried under sharp stones, chained up so that the firelight makes them look like they're shining. They are stuck in a place where there is no sound or light. The pit itself turns into a mirror, showing what pride had become when it lost its shine. What had once seemed like freedom and power was now in ruins and chains. The stones that were pressing against him seemed to sigh, as if creation itself had breathed a sigh of relief at his binding. Time in Dudael doesn't move the same way it does on Earth. In the depths of the pit, days and nights lose their meaning. For Azazel, the silence lasts for a single moment that never ends. It is a prison not only of chains, but also of time. He remembers the first time he walked among the Watchers, who were full of wisdom and admired for their strength. He remembers the oath on Mount Hermon, the whispers of temptation, and how happy it made him to see men with weapons and women with hidden secrets. But in the pit, those memories change. They are no longer victories, but reminders of his failure. What once made him proud now makes him sad, and the silence is full of voices he can't reach. Dudael seems to come alive when he is there, but it doesn't give him any comfort. The rocks around him give off heat and glow faintly in the dark. The jagged walls rise like prison bars made by nature itself. There are cracks where fire flickers, but it never stops burning and doesn't give off any heat. The flames only light up the edges of his chains, making long shadows that move when he moves. People who hear the story might picture the scene as if it were painted with soft, glowing brush strokes, a place that is both scary and strangely peaceful, where silence and judgment live together. Azazel was so proud that he thought he could never fall, but the pit reminds him every moment that all pride eventually bends to the Eternal's will. His chains are more than just metal. They are the weight of every life that has been changed by his teachings, every hand that raised a blade because of his advice, and every heart that turned to vanity because of him. The stones that block his view lie on him just as surely as the stones that crush him. Each link hums with the cries of the earth, locking him up in a prison built not by people, but by justice itself. The Watchers who used to stand next to him are now all over the place, scared of their own judgment, but none of them will die like he did. Dudael is his alone, a place where pride, fire, and silence meet. The earth above keeps groaning, but down here, under the stones, everything is quiet. There is a strange kind of poetry in that stillness. It reminds us that even the strongest people can fall into quiet, that even the loudest voices can be silenced by chains, and that rebellion, no matter how fierce, ends in silence. And so he stays, a figure no one can see, trapped under the sharp stones of Dudael. The fire flickers, the chains get tighter, and the silence gets deeper. Here, time doesn't heal or pass, it just goes on. And on, like a dream that won't let you wake up or a night that never ends. Azazel, who used to be a leader, is now dead and buried, and only the whispers of those who remember his story keep it alive. The world above slowly turns as the pit holds him, waiting for the day when the silence will end and the final judgment will speak again. The valleys went on, shrouded in shadows that no sunrise could break through. These places used to be full of life and the sound of creation, but now they were empty, forgotten pits where silence pressed down like an ocean. Here, the Watchers, who were once bright beings that walked among the stars, were put in prison. Their wings were no longer light and airy. Instead, they were heavy with chains that wouldn't break. It was as if the earth itself sighed at the memory of their fall, as if even the soil couldn't forget how heavy it was to rebel. The Watchers were stuck in these dark valleys, where they were neither alive nor dead. They were in a twilight of punishment, where time itself seemed to stop and wait forever. The chains weren't made of iron or any other metal found on earth. They were made by God and couldn't be broken or moved. They glowed faintly with the seal of judgment. Each link was a reminder of the law they had broken, and each restraint was a reminder of the eternal justice they could no longer escape. They fought against them at times, memories of freedom pulling at the edges of their minds, but the chains did not give way. They weren't supposed to bend. They were meant to be a reminder. In the quiet, their thoughts drifted back to what had been. The sky stretching wide, the music of heaven echoing in their ears, and the endless beauty of creation that they had promised to watch over. But memory didn't help here. It was a pain instead. Every memory of light made darkness seem more real. Every time they remembered what they used to be, the silence got heavier. They had not only turned their backs on their Creator, but they had also turned their backs on themselves, changing their fates into shadows of what could have been. Even though there was no sound, the valleys echoed with this unseen weight. The punishment was not just being locked up, it was also a slow loss of their pride. The stillness taught them what eternity meant when there was no hope left. The air in these valleys was strange. It was thick with a presence that wasn't hot or cold, but was oppressive in its lack of warmth. It didn't make me feel better or give me any pleasure. It just made me feel like I was stuck. Watchers could feel each moment like drops of water falling into an ocean that never ended, with ripples that never went away. They couldn't count time like people do because there were no days or nights here. There was only the eternal present, which never moved, changed, or stopped. This never-ending standstill was worse than fire for beings who had once flown beyond the limits of time. They thought they were strong enough to go beyond the limits of heaven and change their own fates. They had sworn oaths on Mount Hermon under the stars, thinking that being together would keep them safe from harm. But being together couldn't protect them here. In the valleys of darkness, their ties of rebellion had turned into quiet solitude. Even though there were a lot of them, each one felt completely alone. Each chain not only held their arms and legs together, but also their minds, keeping them locked in their own thoughts. And in these depths, thoughts were not good friends. The heaviness of regret felt different at different times. Some were angry inside, holding on to their pride like a dying ember, refusing to bow even though they were chained. Others were sad but didn't say anything, mourning the loss of what they had once loved. Some people tried to remember the songs of heaven, but the tunes broke down and fell silent. And some people just gave up and let the void take them, their minds drifting into a fog that even memory couldn't reach. But no one could escape the truth of their fate. They had been judged, and judgment held them more tightly than any stone. The valleys themselves seemed to be aware of something, as if creation remembered what had been done to it. The jagged walls whispered with voices that weren't there, winds that weren't winds, and shadows that weren't shadows. The Watchers could feel the universe's eyes on them, not in pity, but in serious recognition. Now they were monuments. Monuments to pride, rebellion, and the price of going against the Creator's plan. It wasn't hidden. It was carved into the fabric of eternity, a warning for anyone who might want to follow their path. And yet, there was a strange paradox in their chains. The Watchers never died. They still existed. They had just changed. Living in darkness forever was its own cruel mercy, because it gave them all the time they needed to think, remember, and deal with what they had done. The Watchers had no way to forget their sins, unlike mortals who could hope that time would do so. Their memories held them more tightly than the chains did. They sometimes heard echoes of the world above, but these moments were few and far between. The sounds of children laughing, rivers whispering, and wind blowing across mountains were like bits of dreams that slipped into their minds. These were not acts of kindness, but reminders. Each sound painted what they could no longer touch, and each whisper reminded them of the land they had hurt. The cries of the oppressed and the pain of those who had suffered at the hands of the giants came back to them with terrifying clarity. It was as if the valleys themselves were echoing the voices of the dead, filling the silence with sadness. They could no longer get into the river of time. It flowed above them, moving generations forward, but they stayed at the bottom, chained and still, watching eternity go by. They could tell when the world changed, when the waters covered the earth, and when nations rose and fell, but they couldn't do anything about it. They were forced to watch something they had once tried to shape. The irony was even stronger than chains. Their rebellion had been to leave their station and join the story of humanity. But their punishment was to be forever left out of it, stuck on the outside, looking in. The dark valleys turned into mirrors that showed them the truth they had been ignoring. Power had not set them free, it had destroyed them. Desire had not lifted them up, it had tied them down. The chains weren't cruel for no reason. They were made to break through the illusion of pride. Every link made them think about their choice. Every valley brought back memories of the oath they took under the stars. Every time they were quiet, they thought about the songs they had stopped singing. And so the Watchers stayed, their brilliance dimmed and their eternity changed. They didn't go away because judgment didn't erase them. It remembered them. Their chains were what they left behind, and their valleys were proof of their fall. And the silence, which seemed to go on forever and was heavy, became the canvas for their story. It was not a story of glory, but of the endless waiting, the eternal punishment, and the darkness that never seemed to end. The world had become dark, as if a veil of sadness had been thrown over it. The cries of hunger drowned out the laughter of children, and the beauty of creation was hidden by the shadows of violence. The Watchers and the children they had made had changed humanity from a reflection of divine light into something else. People worshipped power like I. Tea was a god, and greed spread like fire across the land. It felt like the earth itself was groaning under the weight of all the corruption, bending under the weight of spilled blood and broken lives. In this dark place, it seemed like the story of humanity might soon come to an end, swallowed by the chaos that had taken over almost every heart. But in the middle of this darkening night, a small light flickered, strong and steady. It wasn't the light of armies or the glow of riches. It was quiet, almost hidden, and it shone in the heart of one man. Noah, Lamech's son, lived in a world that was crazy, but he didn't let the craziness get to him. While others were greedy, Noah chose to be simple. Noah chose peace when others gave in to violence. Noah stood tall and walked as if an unseen hand was guiding him, while others gave in to the weight of temptation. There was something in him that had not been tainted by the corruption that had spread to almost every part of the world. When you think about the giants' power and show, or the magic that the Watchers taught, Noah's life seemed almost normal. He wasn't a warrior in armor or a ruler with armies at his command. His strength was much greater than anything the corrupt world could show, but it was also quieter and softer. He had a heart that still beat in time with the Creator. His days were full of honesty, kindness, and a quiet respect for the one who made everything. That purity was not loud or showy, it was steady, like the light of a lantern that doesn't flicker even when the wind blows against it. Noah's home was a safe place to be at night when the world outside was full of violence. He brought his family together and taught them to honor the Creator, resist the temptation to be corrupt, and stay faithful even when others thought it was stupid. His kids saw both the harshness of the world and the kindness of a man who lived in a different way. His wife stood by him, sharing in his quiet devotion. Together, they made a life of light in a world where darkness seemed to be everywhere. Noah was different because he chose to resist temptation, not because he was immune to it. The same voices that told other people things also told him things. He had the same chances to gain power and enjoy himself as before, but Noah saw chains where others saw fun. He saw destruction where others saw strength. He had a vision that cut through the watcher's lies and the shine of forbidden knowledge. He knew that what looked like freedom was really slavery, and what looked like happiness was really death. He chose to stay pure, not because he didn't know better, but because he did know better, and that was what made him different. It seemed like the earth itself knew he was different. Noah's steps brought a kind of relief to creation, even though the ground moaned under the weight of the giants and rivers ran red with blood. He worked the land with respect, seeing it as a gift rather than something to be used. The animals seemed calmer around him, even though the Nephilim's huge appetites had made them prey. The air felt lighter where he walked, as if creation still remembered the original harmony and found comfort in Noah's faithfulness to it. Noah's world was very different from the world around him, almost like a dream. Think about walking through a city that has been destroyed, where every building has fallen down and every light has gone out. Then, all of a sudden, you see a single window glowing with warmth. In his time, that was Noah. The Creator found a reason to keep the story going in him, even though humanity was about to go extinct. His purity protected him and promised a better future. It was a reminder that darkness can't completely swallow the light as long as there is one flame. Noah must have felt lonely at times. It wasn't easy to live differently in a world that had given up on honesty. The mocking of his neighbors, the suspicion of those who didn't understand his devotion, and the constant urge to give in all weighed on him like a storm. But he kept going. The laughter of people who made fun of him or the silence of heaven did not shake his faith. He quietly but firmly believed that his way was not in vain and that the Creator saw what others did not. Noah's struggle is very human. It is not a story of perfection, but of not giving up. He didn't shine with angelic light or have the strength of giants. He was just loyal. And sometimes being faithful is the most amazing thing of all. He didn't just happen to be pure. He chose to be pure every day by doing small acts of kindness, saying prayers in whispers, and making decisions when no one was watching. In a world full of big shows of power and corruption, Noah's small, steady faith stood out the most. It is easy to picture the Creator looking down on the earth and being sad about all the violence that was going on. But in that sadness, he looked at Noah and saw in that one man a reflection of what people were meant to be. Noah was a fragile but unbreakable thread of hope that connected the world that had been with the world that was to come. Even though the world was about to end, it wouldn't be completely lost because Noah was still there. The picture of Noah's light in the dark teaches us something softly, like a lullaby. One pure heart can still make a difference, no matter how bad the corruption or how dark the shadows are. One person's faith can keep them from giving up. One choice to walk with the Creator can keep hope alive for many generations. The story of Noah is not only a record of survival, but it also reminds us that purity, even though it is fragile, is stronger than any darkness. Noah's prayers rose like quiet songs in the stillness of night, when the stars shone faintly above the corrupted earth. They were accepted into heaven not because they were eloquent, but because they were honest. And as the world fell deeper into chaos, that one voice of faith became the thread on which the future would hang, the light that showed that darkness could never win completely. The Watchers, who used to shine brightly in their heavenly places, were now drowning in the results of their rebellion. They could no longer walk freely among the stars, and the earth no longer welcomed them with open arms. Instead, they lived in the valleys of shadow, where silence pressed against them like iron chains. They had once been dressed in splendor, but now they were weighed down by the heavy burden of guilt. When they were first sent to watch over creation, they were in awe of it. Now that same creation is speaking out against them. The cries of people who were hurt by their teachings went up to the sky, and the blood that their giant children spilled stained the ground below their feet. The Watchers knew that judgment was coming, and for the first time in their lives, they were afraid. They turned to the only hope they could still see while they were shaking. They thought of Enoch, the man who walked with God and seemed to be a quiet link between heaven and earth. His life was pure, and even they, who were ashamed, saw in him a closeness to God that they had lost. They couldn't get close to the Creator's throne because their sins had made the gap too big. But maybe, just maybe, Enoch could take their words up with him like a fragile gift and carry their desperate plea. The Watchers came together, and their faces were no longer bright with the light of heaven, but marked by sadness. Picture beings of great size who used to look down on mountains and oceans with calm authority, but now bow their heads in pain like lost children. Their voices, which had once told secrets of the heavens, were now full of cracks of despair. They talked about being sorry, being scared, and wanting to be whole again. They begged Enoch to listen, not to turn away from them, and to have mercy on their brokenness. Every word they said was heavy with the weight of eternity because they knew their rebellion wasn't a mistake of ignorance but a choice made out of desire. Now they felt the full weight of its consequences. Enoch stood still and listened to their cries for help. Even though his heart was pure, it wasn't cold. He could see the pain on their faces, which was the same pain that all of humanity felt because of their corruption. He also felt the heaviness of sorrow that affected all of creation. The Watchers, who had once seemed powerful and beyond reproach, now seemed small and weak in their pain, and their voices shook like the wind through dead branches. They begged not with arrogance but with shaking humility, their pride shattered. They told Enoch to take their prayers, write them down, and bring them to the throne of God. Letters were made, words written in sadness and carved in need. The angels who had taught people forbidden knowledge were now struggling to understand the simplest act of prayer. They admitted in their writings what they had done and how they had destroyed both heaven and earth. They wrote about how scared they were of being chained up forever, how scared they were of the fiery valleys, and how much they wanted to be forgiven. The words held both despair and hope, like fragile threads woven together in the trembling hands of the guilty. You could picture their voices blending together, a chorus of brokenness coming from the depths of their exile. Their cries were not like the praise chants they were used to. They were more like the low groans of people who were sad. They talked about how hard it was to fall, how hard it was to watch their children destroy the world, and how hard it was to know that they had gone against the very order they were made to protect. They begged for their punishment to be less harsh, for mercy to be found, and for the Creator's heart to still turn toward them with love. Enoch was kind and read their letters and listened to what they had to say. He wasn't their judge, and he didn't have the power to change their fate, but he listened and agreed to take their case. Even though his heart was loyal to the Creator, he didn't turn away from the pain of any being. He saw the Watchers for who they were, fallen, yes, but not without a hint of sadness. He saw something in that sadness that looked like the sadness of all people, a sadness that wanted things to get better but couldn't change the past. As Enoch got ready to take their words up, there was a calmness that seemed to settle around them. The Watchers looked at him with desperate eyes, as if they were putting all of their fragile hope on his shoulders. They knew that their fate would no longer be a secret once their words reached the throne. Everything now depended on what the Creator wanted: mercy or judgment, silence or a response. They had once made brave choices, but now they were standing still, shaking with fear because they had no choice. The Watchers. Writing letters is a hauntingly soft picture. These beings who had written forbidden knowledge into the hearts of men now pressed words of begging into their own weak petitions. The hands that had taught men how to fight and cast spells now shook as they begged for peace. Their letters showed how broken they were. They were full of longing, fear, and the tiniest bit of hope that somehow, in the middle of judgment, mercy could be found. Enoch didn't take these requests lightly when he got them. He carried them with the weight of someone who knew how sad it was to create something and how holy the Creator was. As he got ready to rise in spirit to deliver their words, the Watchers watched him with their hearts tied to his journey. They couldn't go because their path to heaven was blocked. But through him, their voices would rise, like thin smoke going up to the stars. The Watchers' plea is a moment of weak humanity in their otherwise scary rebellion. Yes, they were very powerful, but in the end, they couldn't avoid feeling sorry. Their letters, cries, and desperate words show that even people who have fallen far can still want the light. Even though their fate had not yet been decided, their trembling words filled the air with a haunting reminder. Even those who chose the path of destruction still want mercy. The silence that followed Enoch's request was unlike any other silence on earth. It wasn't the quiet of night when the wind stops blowing in the trees, or the quiet of a room where sleep rules. It was the silence of forever, huge and unbroken, like an ocean that never ends in the sky. Enoch had taken the letters, which were the shaky words of the fallen Watchers, and put them in front of God. Every word had been said, and every line of their regret rose like smoke from a weak flame. And then there was nothing. There was no voice right away, no thunder rolling from the sky, just a stillness so deep that it felt like a weight on the soul. The Watchers waited in their dark valleys, looking up at the stars far away and hoping for a whisper of mercy. These beings, who used to rule the skies with confidence, now hung around in doubt. They wondered if their cries had been heard and if forgiveness, even though it seemed unlikely, might still come to them. But as the hours turned into days and the days turned into long stretches of time, the heavens stayed the same. Enoch, who was in the presence of God, felt a silence that no human heart could fully handle. He had said what they said, felt their pain, and even though he was full of compassion, he hoped for a kind answer. But when the silence was finally broken, it wasn't out of mercy. It was because of the weight of final judgment. The voice that spoke wasn't mean or full of anger. It was instead steady, strong, and unyielding, like a mountain that has stood still through many storms. The voice said, "There will be no forgiveness." It was as big as the sea and as sharp as a knife. Their sin has ruined the earth. Their choice has ruined the peace of heaven and hurt the generations of men. They didn't want to repent until after the corruption had spread, but only when it had destroyed them. They don't get what they asked for. Their fate is set. These words fell like stones into a deep pool, making waves in the quiet and echoing into the valleys where the Watchers were waiting. The decree's finality seemed to stop even heaven itself. They were not given forgiveness, which comes easily to those who are humble. Their rebellion wasn't just because they were weak, it was also because they were proud and wanted to. And now the result was set in stone, unshakable, and written into the fabric of time. When Enoch got the message, his heart raced. He didn't blame them for what they did, but he was sad because he knew he had to go back with a word that would crush the asked hope of the fallen. He thought about how their faces looked, how their voices shook with regret, and how badly they wanted mercy. But the order was clear, just like the iron chains that were already waiting for them. There would be no going back or changing the sentence. When Enoch came back, everyone was waiting with bated breath. The Watchers stared at him with wide, empty eyes, like men waiting for their trial to end. Some held on to a weak hope, while others were scared and shook. Enoch stood among them, his face serious and his voice full of the kindness of his compassion and the strength of the message he was bringing. He said softly, "The Lord has spoken," and each word felt heavy, like it was carved in stone. "We heard your plea, but we don't accept it. There will be no forgiveness and no lifting of judgment. Your sins have destroyed the earth, and heaven can't ignore them. Your request is denied." These words hung over them like a heavy blanket. The watchers bowed their heads, and their sadness turned into despair. The hope that had been there, even if only for a moment, was gone, and all that was left was the cold knowledge of what was to come. The silence that followed was terrifying. It was like the silence Enoch had felt in heaven, now reflected on earth in the broken hearts of those who had heard it. Some fell to their knees, their huge bodies shaking with the weight of despair. Others looked away, unable to look the scribe in the eye who had brought their request. Some people screamed, not in anger, but in pain, and the sound rose into the night like a wind of mourning. It was the sound of beings who knew they would be chained up forever, and that they would never be free again. The rejection was not mean, but it was final. It was the hard line between holiness and rebellion, a clear reminder that choices can't always be changed. The Watchers, who had once thought they were invincible because of their power, now felt the weight of divine justice on them. And even though the stars were still shining above, they seemed far away and cold, as if heaven itself had moved away. Even though he couldn't change the order, Enoch stayed with them. His presence was like a lantern in a dark valley, a quiet comfort, even though he had to say the words that broke them. His silence with theirs showed that he understood their pain and didn't let it take over his life. He couldn't change their minds, but he could be there for them when they were at their lowest. The Watchers' cries faded into tired silence as they lost strength because they knew what would happen to them. They didn't ask for mercy anymore because the heavens had spoken. They didn't move. Their bodies were like shadows on the stones, and their minds were somewhere between memory and regret. They thought back to the days when they could walk around without worrying about anything, and the beauty of nature amazed them. They remembered how happy they were when they first had a job, to watch and protect. They remembered the time when desire led them astray, and they crossed a line they should never have crossed. Now those memories were just as much chains as the prisons that were waiting for them. They couldn't get away from the guilt of what they had done, and they couldn't find comfort in the hope of being forgiven. Their forever was like an endless night that never ended. And so the silence came back, thicker than it had been. It wasn't the silence of waiting. It was the silence of knowing. The word from the heavens was final. Enoch, the scribe of heaven, had delivered his message. The Watchers were. He left to sit in the echo of rejection, listening to the stillness that would haunt them until the day of their final judgment. Enoch's visions of his journeys start with a quiet pulling away from the earth. His spirit was lifted up by soft whispers of wind, far away from the cries of people, far away from the heaviness of grief, into places beyond the stars. The ground below disappeared. The mountains turned into mist, and soon the sky opened up in layers upon layers. Each world had its own smell, its own quiet, and its own horrible beauty. Angels moved in a quiet, watchful way, their faces glowing like burning lamps. They didn't speak, though, because Enoch was being led into mysteries that no human eye had ever seen. He didn't travel out of fear. He did it out of awe, as if he were walking into the very heart of creation. First, he was taken to a place where the rivers didn't flow with water, but with fire, with molten streams winding across the land forever. Their flames burned without eating anything, moving with a terrible purpose. The air above them was heavy with the weight of judgment and shimmered. Enoch could hear the rushing sound, like 1,000 furnaces breathing together. But underneath it all was silence, a silence that shook the soul. This wasn't fire that gave off light or warmth. It was fire that remembered sins and carried the sound of rebellion in every spark. Beyond the rivers were valleys that were hard to see because of the jagged cliffs that surrounded them. Shadows were heavy here, darker than any night on earth. These valleys were huge rooms where people waited, hiding secrets that even the stars were afraid to touch. Enoch felt the weight of eternity pulling at his spirit as he looked at them. He knew that these places weren't made for beauty, but for destiny. They were places of punishment that had been planned long before time began, just waiting for the right time. The valleys were quiet, but it was a quiet that held sadness, like a mother holding grief in her chest, knowing what was going to happen. Angels who were guiding him spoke to him in low voices, and their words were like streams flowing gently through the air. They told him that the Watchers, who were rebellious, would stay here until the end. Once they were beautiful beings, dressed in light. Now they were waiting for a fate of chains and flames. The valleys were where they would live in the future, a place where light couldn't help and time didn't move forward. The air was heavy with the weight of what was going to happen, and Enoch felt the sadness of it sink into him. He had seen their plea for mercy and their desperation, but now he saw the truth. Their rebellion had made their prison before they were even bound. In another vision, Enoch was taken to mountains that weren't made of stone but of crystal and fire. Their peaks reached the sky and glowed with both beauty and fear. The mountains came out of nowhere, and their sides sparkled with fire that never went out, like the eternal breath of judgment woven into the rocks. From their roots came rivers of fire that flowed like arteries across the cosmic body of punishment, connecting back to the burning streams he had seen before. Enoch felt the stillness of angels who stood as guardians there, their faces unreadable, their forms unmoving. They were there to see these places, but they didn't say anything because the secrets were too heavy for the earth. Enoch saw a room deep in the sky where stars were kept like living things as he traveled further. Some burned brightly, their light steady and pure, while others flickered, dimmed, or lay as if they were chained. The angels told him that these stars weren't just pretty things in the sky, they were living things that had to follow God's rules. Some of them had gone off course, breaking the rules that had been set for them. They were being held here until the time of judgment. Their weak light flickered, like sighs, telling the sadness of not following the rules. Enoch could feel the weight of their sadness and their unspoken sorrow that they had not stayed in their place in the harmony of creation. The visions took him even further, to the heart of the flame where archangels stood in all their glory. Their bodies were like lightning wrapped around people, and their eyes were flames that never went out. They didn't talk to him like men do, but their presence was a message. They were both merciful and angry, and they held the balance of heaven's justice. There were thrones made of fire and crystal around them that were unshaken, unchanging, and not moved by the shaking of the universe. Without saying a word, Enoch knew that these were the places where decisions were made and fates were sealed. And then, while he was on his way, Enoch saw the abyss. It wasn't like the rivers or valleys. It was deeper than anyone could have imagined. Its walls went on forever. Its floor was invisible, and its silence was worse than death. The void was big enough to swallow galaxies, but it stayed still, like a mouth that hadn't spoken yet. It was for the great dragon, who was the enemy of heaven, and for the people who followed him. Enoch's soul shivered when he saw it, and even standing at the edge of it, he could feel the pull of its emptiness. It was a place where there was no fire, only nothingness, and being separated from God would last forever. The angels who were there looked down with sad eyes because they knew what it was like to be cut off from the light. Like waves on a beach, each vision pushed on Enoch's spirit. He didn't think of them as one person dreaming, but as one person witnessing. He could feel the sadness of the valleys, the silence of the abyss, the fire that remembered rebellion, and the emotions of the places. And yet, in the middle of it all, there was a scent. Range peace, because Enoch knew that these places were not chaos, but order. They were the balance of heaven, woven into creation to bring justice to corruption. As Enoch came back from these trips, he slowly made his way back to the world of men, carrying the weight of what he had seen. His heart hurt for the fallen, the people who would suffer, and the angels who had lost their place. But he also had a quiet strength because he knew that there was no randomness in the vast rivers of fire, the dark valleys, or the abyss itself. Only the steady hand of the one who rules eternity. He went back down to the quiet hum of the earth, where the cries of people still rose and the shadows of giants still hung around. He came back with visions that would stay with him forever. Visions that talked about both sadness and justice, punishment and balance. The stars above looked different to him now. The rivers below looked smaller, and even the mountains of earth looked weak. For he had seen the deeper mountains, the rivers of fire, the valleys that were hidden, and the bottomless pit of time. And his soul held them like a song that couldn't be stopped, a song that was only whispered in the breath of heaven. The visions took Enoch even deeper, to places where no living person had ever been, where the curtain between time and eternity rose. His spirit was led into the hidden valleys that lay beneath the earth, where the souls of men were gathered, each waiting for its time to die. The angels who guided him didn't say much because these places spoke for themselves. Their silence wasn't empty. It was full of the soft breath of eternity and the quiet voices of souls that were waiting. These were the valleys of Sheol, the huge underworld where people's fates were decided, and where the unseen currents of justice flowed like rivers through the dark places. The first valley Enoch saw had a soft, dim glow that was like the glow of embers in a fireplace on a cold night. It was warm and comforting. The souls of the good rested here, not in flesh, but in a quiet light that made the air around them peaceful. They waited without fear, their faces calm and their voices soft, like the sound of the wind. Their rest was not troubled but gentle, a kind of sleep that held promise. Enoch felt the warmth of mercy and the smell of hope in this place. It was as if heaven had breathed softly on them and told them to wait a little longer until they got their full reward. It was a valley that didn't feel like a prison, but like a garden at dusk, a place where sadness was eased by the knowledge that joy was coming. But from this safe place, Enoch was shown another valley, and the air there was thick with despair. People didn't gather here in silence. They stirred restlessly because the souls inside were not at peace. These were the souls of people who had lived without being good, who had chosen paths of selfishness and cruelty. Their waiting was not peaceful, it was haunted. They wanted relief, but none came. They wanted light, but none came through. It was dark in the valley, as if the sky had turned its back on it, and the guilt hung in the air like smoke. Their voices rose in cries that the living couldn't hear, but in that place they filled the darkness with a never-ending chorus of regret. Enoch was taken to a valley that was different from the others, a place for people who had never been judged in life, people who had died before their time. The souls here were quiet, but their stillness made me wonder. It looked like they were looking for an answer that hadn't come yet. There was neither peace nor pain in this valley, only waiting. It was a waiting that lasted longer than words could hold. The angels told Enoch that these souls would be shown to him in their own time, each according to the measure set for them. But for now, they were silent, not because they were scared or happy, but because they were mysterious. Enoch felt a soft ache in this place because the souls seemed like kids waiting for their dad to come home, not sure, but not forgotten. Then Enoch was taken to the darkest valley. The air was thick with the smoke of sadness, and the depths were sharp. The souls here were stuck in silence, not by choice, but because it was the end. These were the people who had cursed the Most High's name and followed rebellion to its end. No whispers of hope broke their silence, and no promise of freedom made their chains feel lighter. The ground beneath them seemed to shake with a terrible certainty, as if the earth itself remembered how they had defied it. Their faces were like stone, full of despair, and their silence was louder than screams. This valley wasn't waiting for salvation, it was only waiting for the hour of final judgment. It was a place where eternity seemed to be set in stone, and light couldn't get in. Enoch learned that Sheol was not just one place, but a huge landscape of fate as he moved from valley to valley. It was like a map carved into the very foundations of creation, with each valley made for a specific purpose, and each soul gathered along its own path. Some places were full of hope, while others were full of regret, and still others were quiet with finality. The air itself carried the division of justice, which was invisible but real. It separated the good from the bad, the repentant from the rebellious. He noticed that time felt different in the valley of the righteous. It was like a soft pause. But in the valleys of despair, time seemed to go on forever, as if each moment carried the weight of years. It seemed like every soul had a different idea of what eternity meant, based on the life they had lived. Enoch felt this truth like a song playing in the background of the silence, a reminder that the choices made on earth would echo forever in the realms beyond. Enoch looked up in the middle of these visions and saw the heavens above the valleys. The stars twinkled softly like watchful eye, as looking down, but they didn't break through the darkness of Sheol. The light of creation could not reach the realms of the dead. They were kept separate until the right time. Even in the darkest places, Enoch thought, the gaze of the Most High still stayed. Everything was known, every valley remembered, and every soul seen. God held Sheol in the palm of his hand, and the silence, the waiting, and even the despair were all part of the knowledge of heaven. The angels who led Enoch told him that the souls of these valleys would one day leave. The good would rise to their reward, dressed in light, and their songs would turn into joy. The evil would be thrown into the deeper abyss, where their shadows would be burned away, and the eternal would show each of those who waited in mystery, according to their own wisdom. They whispered that Sheol was not the end, but the waiting place of ends, the room where destinies were not yet complete. Enoch stood in awe, his heart both heavy and light. He felt sad about the cries he had heard and the silence of despair, but he also felt at peace knowing that nothing was forgotten. This huge hidden map showed every soul, every choice, and every path. He now knew why blood cried from the ground and why the earth itself cried for justice. Every action in life flowed into these valleys, changing eternity in silence. Enoch brought the vision of the valleys with him as he drifted back toward the stars from Sheol. The images stuck to him like shadows that wouldn't go away, but they also whispered about the order that was hidden from view. He now understood that death was not the end, but a door to these valleys, where each soul was drawn to its own place and each destiny unfolded in the quiet hands of eternity. The vision unfolded like a dream, but it felt like it had the weight of eternity on Enoch, as if he were being shown not just a place but the very essence of punishment. He was taken to a place where light had been banished and silence ruled with a power greater than any king's. It was a huge space with no end, a darkness that wasn't just the absence of the sun, but a living thing, heavy and still, like a sea without waves or breath. The watchers who had disobeyed their place in heaven were now bound here. Their chains were not made of iron, but of time itself, links made by God that no amount of strength could break. Every moment blended into the next, making an eternity that didn't move forward or backward, a stillness that never broke, which became its own torment. In this never-ending darkness, the idea of day and night disappeared. There was no dawn to look forward to and no dusk to mark the passing of time. The watchers felt the heavy weight of waiting forever when time lost its normal rhythm. They were chained in a way that was invisible but impossible to deny, and it was a part of who they were. They couldn't look away, couldn't get up, and couldn't even tell how quiet it was around them. Being stuck here meant losing all movement, freedom, and hope for change. The endless waiting became worse than fire because fire burns things up, but this silence only kept the memory of rebellion alive, stretching it out across the void. The quiet here wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It was the quiet of being alone, a quiet that felt like a weight too heavy to bear. There was no sound at all, not even the faintest memory of it, like the rustle of leaves, the whisper of water, or the voices of creation. The watchers were used to the music of the heavens, but now they were in a place where even their thoughts seemed to go on and on into nothingness. They were stuck not only in chains, but also in the suffocating lack of everything that used to be familiar to them. The quiet became a mirror that showed their decisions, their pride, and their fall. They couldn't get away from themselves in the quiet. The darkness wasn't just an absence. It was a living cloak that made everything lose its shape. Shapes melted away, horizons faded away, and the watchers couldn't even see the walls of their prison. They seemed to be floating in the endless space between stars, but they were heavier, thicker, and more suffocating. There was no light, no shadow, no difference, just the heavy blackness that pressed against their eyes and minds. This darkness would never end because it didn't promise a new day. They weren't even allowed to hope for light, and the sharpest edge of their punishment was this endless denial. Enoch could barely make out their shapes, or what was left of them in the eternal night. They were huge, but they were also weak, and they were now trembling and still. They had once walked among the stars, dressed in light, but now they lay like fallen mountains, chained and quiet. Their wings, which had once been bright, were now folded and stiff, and they couldn't lift them up anymore. Their voices, which used to be loud with orders and songs, were now lost in the quiet of judgment. Even though they didn't get older, the endlessness of their punishment made them feel older in spirit, as every moment was an eternity of remembering. The chains themselves looked like they were alive, moving with the will of heaven. They weren't made of iron from this world, and they couldn't be broken by force. They were woven into the very fabric of time, tying the watchers together in body and in fate. It was pointless to fight, because the chains only got tighter with each struggle, getting heavier with the weight of eternity. These chains were meant to stay together because the Eternal himself said so, and no one, mortal or immortal, could break them. The watchers learned that their rebellion was useless while they were in these bonds, but they would never forget the lesson. Enoch's heart raced as he looked at this place. He felt the weight of eternal darkness, which was scarier than fire or flood. The earth could shake and the seas could roar, but this silence and stillness couldn't be moved. It was a punishment that didn't have a voice or a show. It was just the unbearable weight of forever. He was sad for the people who were lying there, but he also knew that justice had been done. They had once chosen to be corrupt, to lie, and to turn away from the light they had been given. Now they were left in the dark. In this vision, time itself seemed to fade away. Enoch couldn't say how long he stayed there because the darkness made time seem to stop. He knew why this place was chosen as their prison. It wasn't just to bind their bodies, but to take away everything they had once abused. They had tried to change the order of creation and make knowledge come before its time. And now time itself held them back, with each moment a chain and each breath a reminder of the endlessness they couldn't escape. The angels who were with Enoch spoke softly, and their voices were like strands of light in the dark. They told him that this was the fate of people who had left their posts and tried to change the balance of heaven and earth. Their chains were not only a punishment for what they had done, but they were also a sign for all of creation that nothing is outside the order of the Most High. The darkness that lasted forever was not only their prison, it was also their witness. Enoch's vision stayed in this world for a long time, and he felt himself drawn to silence as well. His own thoughts quieted, and his breathing slowed, as if he, too, were affected by the heaviness of time. He understood that eternity could be both a blessing and a curse, a peaceful garden and a prison of despair. For the good people, eternity was full of light and hope. For the fallen, eternity was a chain, a silence that could not be broken, and a darkness that never went away. He looked away, but the memory of the eternal darkness stayed with him. It stuck to his mind like a shadow, reminding him of how much it would cost to rebel and how fair the Creator is. He carried with him the image of chains made of time, chains that no hand could break, holding the fallen not just in place, but also in the endless silence of waiting. He would always remember the vision, which reminded him that eternity holds both the promise of light and the certainty of unbroken darkness. What if the story of the angels trapped in eternal darkness was not just an old story of rebellion, but also a warning that has been carefully kept for people? Enoch's vision wasn't just to show him what had already been decided in heaven. It was also to send a message through time and generations as a quiet reminder of what pride and disobedience can lead to. People didn't just forget about the fall of the Watchers like they would a piece of old parchment. It was a mirror that showed people the dangers that have always been there and will always be there, and it whispered the same lesson over and over, that to rise above the order of the Most High is to invite chains that no hand can break. The angels were made in a beautiful way, with clothes made of light and power and beauty that can't be measured. They stood close to the throne of glory, seeing things that no human eye could bear. But even though they were so close, pride got in the way. They looked down at the people below them, who were weak and fragile but also free in a strange way. Instead of being happy with their place in heaven, they wanted more and wanted to taste what they couldn't have. They wanted to be in charge of their own lives, to mix with people where there were limits, and to cross lines that had been set by eternal wisdom. They heard what pride said to them. Their fall became a never-ending warning. If beings dressed in glory could fall because of pride, what about people? This warning was kept in Enoch's writings. He talked about how they made a vow on Mount Hermon, which tied them together in a rebellion. At that moment, they thought they were strong, together, and untouchable. But their unity fell apart, and their strength became chains. Their rebellion led to their downfall. The lesson is easy to understand. Every goal that starts with pride ends in failure. The Watchers thought they could keep light away from its source, but their own brilliance was lost when they tried to own it. How many times do people do the same thing, trying to get power without wisdom and glory without humility? This isn't just a story about punishment. It's also a story about thinking. Every person who hears the story of the Watchers is asked to think about their own heart. At first, pride doesn't make a lot of noise. It comes in softly, like being impressed by your own gifts or wanting to go a little further than you should. But pride grows like a shadow at dusk, slowly getting bigger until it blocks out all the light. The angels didn't fall all at once. They fell by giving in to their desires, thin, king about something, or crossing a line. The same goes for the path of humanity. Every choice is a step, and every step takes you either toward light or chains. The ancient world saw what happened because of the angels' pride. The Nephilim, huge giants born from their union, ate and destroyed everything until the earth itself cried out. Azazel taught people how to use weapons that had never been seen before, and blood stained the ground. Magic and hidden arts spread among men and women, corrupting every part of life. And as people learned more, they forgot more about the source of all wisdom. What started out as interest turned into slavery. The fall of the angels didn't just affect them, it also affected people, leaving destruction in its wake. That destruction wasn't just for their time. Every generation after has had to deal with its own problems in smaller ways. The warning has been around for hundreds of years and can be found in every heart that wants to rule over others, every hunger for knowledge that doesn't care about the cost, and every desire to live without limits. The watchers, who are trapped in darkness, silently bear witness to the truth that pride blinds and corrupts. The chains they wear are not just theirs, they show what will happen to anyone who lets pride rule them. The story becomes more than history for those who listen with a calm heart. It becomes a soft warning song that reminds people of how weak they are. Men and women can lose themselves when they seek power without reverence, just like the angels forgot their place and had to deal with the silence of eternal night. Pride always says it will set you free, but it only puts you in chains. Even though it may seem lowly, humility is the way that brings light. When you bow, you stay upright, but when you lift yourself up, you fall. Even when it's quiet at night, when you lie down with these words, the lesson hums like a soft beat. The watchers felt the same things as people did. They were moved by wonder, curiosity, and desire. But they let their desire for more take over their obedience and their pride take them too far. Their warning is soft because it comes from beings that used to shine brightly. It whispers to the heart that is always on the go, don't let your gifts ruin you. This message goes back in time and softly touches the present. People still have trouble with pride. There is the pride of nations, the pride of rulers, and the pride that is hidden in every person's heart. Technology advances and knowledge proliferates. However, devoid of humility, these may transform into instruments more formidable than Azazel's doctrines. The temptation is the same now as it was in Enoch's time, to go beyond what is good, to seek power without respect, and to forget the Creator in the process of creation. And still, the warning stands. Those who don't choose the humble path will be chained. The fall of the angels was written not only to scare people, but also to show them the way. Noah's purity shone like a beacon in the sea of corruption. People can choose light even when darkness is everywhere. The angels who are bound in the valleys of shadow are a reminder and a call. Stay humble, stay close to the source of all wisdom, and stay within the limits that protect you instead of binding you. Pride makes walls that fall down, but humility makes paths that last. The vision of Enoch stays with me like a dream that won't go away. He kept telling the story, not just as a record of what had happened, but also as a warning. People were never meant to learn it and then leave it alone. It was meant to stop, think, and listen to the sound of chains rattling in the dark for all time. It becomes a soft lantern, and in the dark for those who listen, showing them the way away from pride and toward the calm peace of humility. The rhythm of warning and comfort mix as the story rests on the listener. The fall of angels isn't just a story about destruction, it's also a reminder that humility protects and pride destroys, even in the vastness of eternity. If you listen closely enough, the watcher's silence will still speak. Their chains echo through time, telling people that the greatest strength is not in raising oneself up, but in bowing down to the one who holds eternity in his hand. There are so many stories that have been lost to time, but the story of Enoch and the binding of the watchers has survived. It's almost like a miracle that it has. A lot of the ancient world has been broken up into pieces, like whispers carved into stone or faint lines scratched into fragile scrolls. And yet, in Ethiopia, high in the mountains, and in the care of its devoted guardians, the whole story was kept alive, not just as a legend, but as scripture that was part of an unbroken tradition. The mystery surrounding this survival is almost as scary as the story itself, as if the heavens had decided that this knowledge should not die, but instead be kept safe until the time came for the world to remember it again. Ethiopia became a kind of resting place, a living vault where ancient words lived on through the years. In other places, the text was questioned, scattered, or lost. Here, it was welcomed and woven into the prayers, chants, and rhythms of worship. The Ethiopian Bible has 88 books, not the 66 that most people in the West are used to. Each book has a lot of wisdom that many people would not be able to see. The Book of Enoch is not just an interesting apocryphal text, it is scripture that still speaks with authority. This is very calming, an image of monks and priests walking in ancient paths with the stories on their lips, their chants echoing through stone churches carved into cliffs and their voices keeping alive what might have been forgotten. This preservation feels like a divine whisper, reminding us that not everything is lost in the passage of time. In the quiet of the Ethiopian highlands, where the clouds hang low and the air smells like incense, a tradition grew that didn't throw away Enoch's visions. Instead, it cared for them like a fire in the dark. The fact that the story of angels bound in darkness has survived shows that some knowledge was meant to last and be protected by people who are willing to treat it with respect. People all over the world might have let it fall to dust, but Ethiopia gathered it up, tied it up, and passed it on from one generation to the next, like a sacred inheritance. It's easy to feel the weight of their devotion when you picture the ancient scribes hunched over their manuscripts, their ink tracing the haunting words that talked about angels chained in valleys of darkness and rivers of fire that never stopped. They must have known deep down that they weren't just copying words. They were protecting a window into mysteries that were bigger than them. They had a lot to do, but they stayed still and kept the light alive for a world that might need to hear these words again one day. The quiet in their scriptoria wasn't empty. It was a hum of faith and a rhythm of patience that had been going on for hundreds of years. The Ethiopian canon's breadth shows a wide and all-encompassing view of the sacred, one that is willing to value voices and visions that others have turned away from. Maybe it was their faith, which was so deeply rooted in ancient soil, that made them see what others did not. That Enoch's story was not just about angels, punishment, or even prophecy. It was a map of what you couldn't see, a story of both danger and hope, a warning and a promise all at once. Ethiopia held more than a book. It held a mirror to the soul of humanity, reminding it of its fragility and its fate. You can almost see the hidden wisdom flowing through the illuminated manuscripts that are still around, their pages stained with the work of hands that carefully copied them. Gold leaf halos shine softly, and letters written in ancient Ge'ez script stand tall. The words come to life, whispering about the valleys of Sheol, unbroken chains, rivers of fire, and God's eternal watch over the fate of both angels and men. The fact that these manuscripts are still around is like a parable. The truth has stayed the same for a long time, waiting quietly until modern eyes could see them again. This continuity has a sleepy wonder to it. Ethiopia kept the story going like a ship crossing dark waters, even as empires rose and fell, cities burned, and libraries were destroyed. The silence of long-forgotten times could not drown it out. The noise of victory couldn't get rid of it. The careful rhythm of oral recitation, the seriousness of liturgy, and the hard work of scribes made sure that the chains of darkness that Enoch saw in his visions would stay in people's minds. When you think about this, you can feel the difference between being weak and being strong. Memory is fragile. Parchment burns, papyrus withers, and voices fade. And yet, this story is older than most civilizations that are still alive today. It can still be heard in the chants of Ethiopian priests and felt in the pages of an unbroken Bible. It seems like eternity is gently leaning into time, telling some words to stay and letting others go. And in that mystery, there is a deep silence, as if heaven itself made sure that this story would not be lost. When we think about this survival, we start to realize that Ethiopia's part was not by chance. It was a land that was already steeped in the rhythms of the sacred and had already been chosen to hold stories of divine encounters. Its mountains became holy places, its valleys were filled with prayers, and its customs took root so deeply that no storm of history could break them. Keeping Enoch's visions safe meant more than just keeping words safe. It also meant keeping wisdom safe. a wisdom that was meant to remind people of their limits and their hope, of their need for humility, and of their promise of redemption. This hidden wisdom stayed like a secret garden, quiet but alive, waiting for people to come in as the years went by. Today, when eyes from across the world turn to Ethiopia and discover that here lies a fuller canon, a broader scripture, they encounter not just history, but a mystery that feels alive, whispering across ages. It is the story of how those who lived in the light of faith remembered angels who were bound in darkness, and how their story, which was kept alive against all odds, became a gift not just for Ethiopia, but for all of humanity who still wants to understand the unseen. The vision of judgment starts in silence, as if time itself is holding its breath, waiting for the glory to be revealed that words can hardly describe. In the mind's eye, there is a hall that was not built by people. It is huge and immeasurable, and its size is beyond what anyone can imagine. The silence in the hall is so heavy that it feels like a living thing. In that silence, there is hope that something eternal will happen, and slowly, like the dawn, the thrones of judgment show up. The thrones of kings are made of stone or wood, but these are living flames that flicker and rise. Their edges are sharp with light, and their bases are burning with rivers of fire that never stop flowing. The flames don't burn anything. Instead, they light up the air, making it look like eternity is breathing through them. On these thrones sits greatness that has been there for a long time and will never change. The Ancient of Days, who people see in visions, is not described in terms of flesh, but in terms of eternity. His clothes are white like snow and as clean as frost that hasn't been touched and shines in the first light of day. His hair is like wool, glowing with age that isn't weak but timeless, a crown of wisdom that can't be measured by years. There is a fire that comes from his presence that is not destructive but holy. It makes everything that is hidden clear and every secret known. There are countless hosts around him, and rows of angelic beings that look like waves of light that go on forever. They don't say anything, but their silence is louder than thunder, and their stillness is stronger than the roar of the oceans. The throne is on fire, and the wheels of flame turn in a rhythm that never stops, making it seem like there is no beginning or end. Sparks drift away like stars, carried away by unseen currents until they disappear into the vastness of the cosmic hall. There are bright, endless rivers of fire flowing in front of the throne. They flow down into valleys that can't be seen, carrying with them the memory of judgment and the cleansing of creation. These flames aren't wild. They move in a way that makes it seem like they follow rules that are deeper than time itself. Their light makes the difference between good and evil clear. The pictures are both scary and calming. No hurry, no violence, no need for noise, just the slow reveal of beauty. In this vision, even judgment doesn't seem rushed. It seems to go on forever, moving at its own pace, huge and unshakable. You can almost float in it, like in a dream where the fire is soft as silk and the light bends like water. The glory is too much to take in, but it doesn't crush you. Instead, it fills every thought and every part of your soul with the knowledge that this is the center of everything, the one before whom even the highest angels bow their heads. Books are open and huge. Old books are on stands of light. Their pages shine with scripts that no human hand has ever traced. They hold the record of every breath, every deed, and every thought that was whispered into the heart's silence. Every book is alive, and every word is full of memories, as if the universe itself wrote its history into them. Everything is remembered. Those lines hold every wrong, every good deed, and every act of hidden cruelty or secret mercy. The thrones of judgment don't need words to make a decision. The truth itself makes it clear what needs to be revealed. But even with all the fire, books, and eternity going on, there is a calm that surrounds everything. The fiery thrones don't get angry. They glow like stars in their places. The Ancient of Days does not roar with rage. Instead, it shines with a presence so great that nothing false can live in its light. It is a judgment that feels more like revealing than punishing, more like truth than anger, burning away the shadows that cling to creation. The flames are not random. They are pure and move like the tide, revealing what needs to be revealed, healing by consuming and cleansing by fire. There are countless angels standing in front of the throne. Their faces are hidden and their bodies shine like molten bronze. They are quiet but alert. They don't move, but their stillness shakes with awe, as if they are also feeling the weight of the moment. Their wings catch the firelight and shine in gold and silver colors. The sound of the rivers of flame is like a lullaby that goes on forever. It's soft, but never stops, and it calms all other thoughts. To drift in this vision is to feel the slowness of cosmic time, the kind of waiting that has no end and only the feeling of inevitability as truth unfolds. When the vision talks about judgment, it doesn't mean quick courts or short verdicts. Instead, it talks about how truth never ends. The Ancient of Days doesn't need to yell. Just being there is enough to judge, and looking at him is enough to make a decision. People who stand in front of him don't argue or beg. They are just shown. The flames reveal who they really are, not who they pretended to be. The rivers of fire flow over them, burning away everything that isn't real and leaving only the essence of what is left. For some, it's a light that shines brighter than ever. For others, it's ash that falls into silence. The thrones are still burning, and they will never go out. Empires rise and fall, stars are born and die, but the thrones stay the same. Their fire never goes out, and their light never fades. The vision itself is timeless. It doesn't belong to one time or place, but instead goes on forever as a reminder that everything bends toward truth, and every story leads to judgment. But even though the vision is grand, it has a softness, almost like it is sleepy, as if even eternity hums like a lullaby. The flames aren't wild, they're slow and steady, like embers in a big fireplace. Their warmth fills the huge cosmic hall with a calm that can't be shaken. The picture of the Ancient of Days stays with me the most. His white robe flows like rivers of light, and it is clean and smooth. His hair is pure and shines, his throne is on fire, and his books hold everything that is hidden. And above it all, there is silence. An eternal silence that is heavy and holy, a silence that speaks louder than words, a silence that carries the weight of both mercy and truth. When you look at this vision, you start to realize that judgment is not chaos, but order, not noise, but peace, not rage, but the steady fire of truth that burns forever in the thrones of judgment. The vision of the Son of Man rises softly in the Book of Enoch, like a star that has been hidden behind the veil of night for a long time. The prophet doesn't talk about him as a distant figure of imagination. Instead, he says that he has existed before time itself, was chosen and hidden, and was kept close to the Lord of Spirits until the right time. There is no fanfare when he arrives. Instead, there is the quiet power of destiny, as if creation has always been waiting for him to show up. He is beautiful, kind, and awe-inspiring all at the same time. His face shines brighter than the sun, but it also has the softness of someone who has been through hard times. People say that his face is full of grace, and his role goes beyond the limits of history. He is the one who stands next to the Ancient of Days, sharing in his glory and getting honor and power that no one else has. This person, who is the Messiah, is both familiar and strange. He is called the Son of Man, which means he is both close to people and above them, both human and divine. The words make him seem like someone who knows how weak humans are and how hard it is to be mortal, but he is still higher than the angels in heaven. He is sitting on a throne of glory in the visions. This throne is not for angels or saints, but for the one who was chosen before the world was made. His throne is bright and surrounded by streams of light. All the kings, rulers, and powerful people bow down before him. No one can stand in front of him because his judgment is perfect and his justice cannot be changed. The Son of Man is not a judge of how cruel people are, but of how right they are. His eyes see through shadows and his words bring to light what is hidden. People say that he will bring down the proud, take away the false power of the strong, and lift up the humble who have suffered under oppression. The fallen angels, who once went against God's will, now see him as their judge. He is the one who makes their chains last forever and seals their fate. The story of their corruption, their fall, and their sharing of forbidden knowledge all lead to this moment when the Son of Man sits on the throne, carrying the weight of judgment that even the archangels are afraid to speak. In Enoch's vision, this messianic figure is not just a punisher, he is also a savior. His very presence is a source of light for the good, a source of comfort for those who have suffered, and a source of fear for those who built their thrones on lies and violence. The kings of the world are scared when he shows up. Their crowns, treasures, and armies all disappear in front of his greatness. The light that comes from him reaches every part of creation, so they can't hide. His voice is steady, not angry, but final, as if every word he says has the weight of eternity. The prophecy says that he will sit to judge the nations of the earth and the hosts of heaven. The angels who broke their promise to stay in heaven, swore their oath on Mount Hermon, and ruined creation are brought before him. They see the throne, the glory, the rivers of fire, and the Son of Man who is in charge of what happens to them. Their cries go unheard. Their rebellion gets what it wants. His judgment is not quick like a sword, but slow like fire. It eats up everything, burns forever, and leaves nothing hidden. The chains that kept them in the dark are now known to be eternal, and the one who has been chosen since the beginning has sealed the verdict. But there is kindness in his role for the good. He is the shepherd of souls as well as the judge of angels. People who have been oppressed, made fun of, ignored, or killed by the giants and proud rulers of the earth can now find peace in him. He shines as their light and their savior. His throne doesn't just give off fire, it also gives off peace, warmth, and the kind of safety that tired people want. The countries that tried to erase the truth are gone now, but the ones who held on to their faith are gathered around him, where they find the reward for their endurance. Enoch says that this Son of Man was around before the sun and stars were made and was hidden in God's presence until the right time came for him to be revealed. This hiddenness adds to the mystery, as if the world wasn't ready to see him until the earth's corruption forced him to show himself. He is eternal, but he enters time. He is beyond this world, but he comes close to people. The tension of his dual nature, the Son of Man who is also the eternal judge, creates a sense of wonder that lingers like a dream in the mind. The fallen angels are afraid of him not only because he judges them, but also because he is everything they used to try to copy. They wanted people to worship them, but worship belongs to him. They wanted to be beautiful, but he is beauty that has never been tainted. They wanted power, but his power lasts forever. Their fall is a dark background that makes his light shine even brighter. And when they see him sitting in glory, they know that their rebellion has failed, their pride has been broken, and the one they tried to replace is now in charge without question. His presence is both comforting and challenging for people. The prophecy says that he will judge both angels and people who are alive and dead. In his eyes, kings and rulers, peasants and servants are all the same. The scales can't be tipped, and the records can't be changed. He sees every life and makes the truth clear. But for those who are tired, this is not fear, but hope. His justice means that the oppressed will be heard, the silenced will be heard, and the forgotten will be remembered. His throne is where wrongs are made right, and tears are wiped away. The prophecy of the Son of Man in Enoch is like a lullaby of judgment and hope. It stays with a soft intensity, painting the picture of a figure who is bright and eternal, the chosen one who has always been and will always be. His job is not just to condemn, but also to show, not just to judge, but also to heal. He shines as the one who brings balance back, who brings peace where rebellion broke it, and who seals the fate of angels and men forever. And as the vision comes to an end, the Son of Man stays on his throne of glory, calm and unshaken. His light fills every shadow, and his presence lasts longer than time itself. There are books in heaven that are unlike any on earth. The air feels weightless, and time flows like a calm river with no beginning or end. These are not books made of ink and paper or scrolls made of paper that are fading. They are living records that look like they were written with threads of light. Enoch's visions show the books of heaven as holy places where every action, word, and thought of angels and people is written down. There is nothing that is missed or forgotten. Their pages turning don't sound like paper rustling. They sound like the hum of eternity itself, soft, steady, and deep. It's a sound that drifts through heaven's halls like a lullaby. The books are very big. They go far beyond what people can see. Some are open, glowing like fireflies in the dark, while others are still closed, waiting for their turn. Every page is a tapestry of lives lived, choices made, and paths taken. There are names of both kings and beggars carved here, but not with ink. They will last forever. The good deeds, the sacrifices of love, and the prayers said in secret shine like stars on the pages. The sins, betrayals, hidden pride, and cruelty are all written down, dark marks that call out for justice. These heavenly records don't miss a thing. Enoch felt the weight of these books as he looked at them. They weren't just records. They were witnesses, and each entry held the breath of truth. The scribes of heaven, who are invisible and never stop working, move like shadows of light and write with unbroken devotion. They never rush or put off their work. They write down every little gesture and sigh with great care, as if every heartbeat of creation has a purpose in the grand scheme of things. It is a reminder that life is never lived alone and that every choice has an effect that lasts forever. The books of heaven are not meant to scare people. They are meant to help them, understand things better. For the good people, they are a comfort because they show that their struggles and sacrifices will not be forgotten. The widow who gave her last piece of bread, the child who said a prayer in the dark, and the worker who chose to be honest when no one was watching. All of these things are written in golden strokes in the heavenly records. These things will never be forgotten in the great flow of history. But for the wicked, the books are a mirror that is too sharp to look at. The pages show the hidden cruelty, the secret plots, and the power that hides the wrongs. They are all there, plain to see. There is a deep sense of stillness in these scrolls' vision, as if the heavens themselves stop when they are opened. Angels stand guard with serious faces and folded wings in respect. The books give off light that isn't harsh or blinding, but steady, like the glow of oil lamps in a quiet room. Every book opens at its own time, revealing truths that have been hidden for a long time. The act of revealing these truths is part of the judgment itself. It is not just words on pages, it is the unfolding of fates and the revealing of justice. The story has a sleep-like rhythm that makes you feel like the pages are turning slowly, as if the universe itself is breathing in and out with each record that is revealed. God owns time, so there is no rush in heaven. Each entry has its own place. The pages softly flutter, carrying the weight of hundreds of years. The sound is like the sound of waves lapping against the shore. For the listener, it is a reminder that life has a quiet accountability, and that even the smallest act of kindness or cruelty has an effect on the world. Enoch talks about how angels are often called to testify to these books. They testify to the deeds written down, confirming their truth with voices that don't change or add to them. No bribe can change their minds, and no excuse can make their testimony less harsh. What is written stays the same. But there is also a sense of mercy in these records, because there are notes of forgiveness, sins erased when people truly repented, and burdens lifted when people turned back to the Creator. There are also strokes of grace on those pages, not just ink of judgment. These books are a link between heaven and earth, connecting the temporary with the eternal. It means that nothing done in the dark is lost, and it also means that no tear, struggle, or faithful prayer goes away into nothingness. Everyone is together, safe and remembered. The oppressed who thought no one heard their cries, and the righteous who thought no one saw their sacrifices, will find proof in these records that heaven was always listening. In the soft light of the vision, one can see the books resting on crystal altars, with their light bouncing off of still pools of water that never stop rippling. It sounds like a bell ringing softly in the distance, telling the universe to be quiet. The Ancient of Days is still near them, and his gaze is fixed on their pages with perfect knowledge. He knows everything, so nothing surprises him. The books, on the other hand, are proof for the hosts of heaven and the generations of creation. They are the chorus of truth, the last word that ends all arguments. The pictures make you feel awe and peace, not just fear. It comforts the tired soul by reminding it that life has meaning and that heaven remembers even when the world forgets. Time does not erase each act of love or each choice of faith. They are etched in stone forever. The books are both judgment and comfort, law and lullaby. They hold the whole story of life. And so, in the stillness of the heavenly halls, the books of heaven stay open and waiting, their light steady and their pages never-ending. They softly sing about mercy, whisper about justice, and breathe the thought that nothing is ever really lost. Every name, every action, and every tear is known, and in the end, all will be revealed in the turning of those bright pages. The old story of angels comes to life in the quiet of the night, when the shadows soften and the stars scatter their silver light across the dark sky. It is a story of two fates that are not linked by chance, but by the choices of loyalty or rebellion that last forever. Angels of light, shining like the dawn, walked in step with the Creator's will. Their wings shone with purity, their eyes shone with wisdom, and the songs they sang made heaven stronger. On the other hand, there were those who turned away from the light and looked not at the brightness of the Ancient of Days, but at the depths of their own wants. These dark angels had a spark of pride in them, and when that spark turned into a flame, their beauty faded and their brilliance faded. The angels of light, who were always devoted, became guardians of order, flowing like calm rivers through all of creation. They weren't just servants, they were bright reflections of God's will, bringing harmony wherever they went. Every flap of their wings felt like the sound of the wind on calm water, and every gesture was a quiet song of trust. They were loyal not because they were afraid, but because they loved Him. Their love drew them closer and closer to the throne, which was on fire for all time. When you looked at them, you felt at peace, as if all your worries had disappeared into the light of eternity. But just like a candle makes shadows when it burns, there was another fate. The angels who turned away from the light chose the path of rebellion. They gave up melody for dissonance and respect for defiance. Their voices, which had once been part of the heavenly choir, became harsh and out of tune, like storms breaking over weak ground. These creatures weren't ugly. They used to be as beautiful as the morning star. But when they tried to get more glory for themselves than for the Creator, their beauty became a trap. Darkness clung to them, not like a cloak on their shoulders, but like a hunger that came from deep inside them. There is a huge poetic difference between these two fates, as if the heavens themselves held up a mirror to remind people that they have a choice. Picture the angels of light for a second. Like the sun coming up, their beams break the silence of the night and bring warmth and clarity to every part of life. Their loyalty is as steady as the tide and as endless as the stars that never stop shining. When they move, they spread hope like petals on a gentle breeze, and when they sing, it seems like even sadness must bow and be quiet. They are fidelity made real, love made real, and purity breathing as fire. Now think about the dark angels. They are like stars that have fallen from the sky. They shine for a moment and then disappear into darkness. Their rebellion is not a victory, it is a failure, like towers that fall down because they were built on pride instead of stone. They move like shadows with sharp edges, and they are cold and restless. Their voices don't calm, they disturb, carrying whispers that make the heart uneasy. Angels of light care for people, while angels of darkness hurt them. The loyal shine outward, while the rebels fold in on themselves, held back by their own wants. The comparison turns into a lullaby of differences. One fate lies in surrender, in the soft giving up of oneself before the eternal flame. The other one is always on fire with self-importance and can't sleep at night. One path leads to peace with the Creator, while the other leads to separation and a never-ending search. It seems like the heavens are telling us that loyalty brings light and rebellion brings endless falling. Their fates are like poetry, with a rhythm that sounds like the soft pulse of life. People say that the angels of light are like rivers that come from an eternal spring. They are always fresh, clear, and full of life. There are a lot of them, and they never worry about losing them because their source is endless. The angels of darkness, on the other hand, are like deserts that used to have rivers but are now dry and cracked. Nothing grows there, and the horizon is empty. Loyalty gives life, while rebellion takes it away. Even in their rebellion, the angels of darkness hold a strange truth, that pride can blind even the most beautiful beings. They are warnings that are written in the dark. Their fall is not just something that happened in the past. It is also a mirror that shows every heart that feels the pull of pride. Their fate shows us that beauty can fade away if it forgets where it came from. They faded just like flowers do when they are cut from their roots. The angels of light, on the other hand, are witnesses of hope. They show that loyalty is not being stuck, but being free, not losing, but gaining. Their obedience brings them an endless joy, like music that gets better the longer it plays. They show that humility is not a sign of weakness, but rather the soil in which everlasting strength grows. Heaven whispers to all of creation through them that faithfulness will never be forgotten. Their future is full of promise. Picture the scene as if you were watching a cosmic painting come to life in front of tired eyes. A canvas of bright beings wearing clothes made of fire and silver stands like a steady star around the throne of the Ancient of Days on one side. Their wings opened up like curtains of light, and their songs wove threads of harmony into the fabric of time. On the other side, shadows writhe in the abyss, their forms broken and their voices echoing with hollow defiance. The two paths are not blurred. They are very clear, like a message written into the very heart of the universe. The story moves through the night like a soft breeze, inviting us to see these two paths not just as the story of angels, but also as a mirror of our own choices. Every moment presents the same choice: loyalty or rebellion, humility or pride, harmony or discord. Like the angels of light, who chose to bow before the eternal flame, people can also bend toward light. And just like the angels of darkness fell when they turned inward, we can also wither when we put ourselves above everything else. The fates of angels, depicted in light and shadow, transcend mere ancient memory. They manifest as a living parable, a soft yet haunting lullaby that prompts us to consider our position. And as the night goes on, this difference gets even clearer. Loyalty flows into peace like a river flows into the sea, and rebellion is like a storm that never stops looking for peace. In this quiet moment of thought, the heart moves toward a truth that is as old as the stars, that light and darkness are not the same paths, but two eternities separated by choice. In the stillness of a dreamlike vision, the end of everything happens with a weight that time can't measure. The last chapter of the story of the fallen ones, who once flew high with brilliance but then fell into rebellion, is here. They who turned away from the light and wrapped themselves in darkness are now facing their hour of judgment. They are no longer wandering in half-lit places or whispering to the living. The time has come for their fate to be sealed and judgment to be made. It is not a punishment based on cruelty, but on justice, putting things back in order that rebellion had broken. The scene starts out like a huge canvas with colors of fire and shadow. The Ancient of Days is so powerful that thrones burn with flames that can't be put out, and the heavens shake. The light that comes from his throne is not the soft glow of morning. It is a consuming brilliance that is sharper than lightning and deeper than the sun. Nothing that is not true can stand up to its touch. For the fallen angels, this light is too much to handle. It is a fire that takes away their illusions and shows how naked their rebellion is. The light that used to make them sing now burns through them, leaving them with nowhere to hide. Their last punishment doesn't happen in a flash, like putting out a candle. It is a fall into something that lasts. The darkness they used to love becomes their home forever. Think of a huge hole that is deeper than any ocean and where no starlight can reach. The void opens up wide, as if the very fabric of creation is ready to swallow them. The fallen ones are thrown into it, not as powerful rulers of shadows, but as prisoners who made their own chains. Their screams sound like thunder in empty caves, but no one answers. Their power, which was once so corrupt that it was terrible, is now gone because of the weight of divine judgment. People say that the books of heaven are opened at that time. Every action, every word, and every act of rebellion is laid bare, and justice flows like an unstoppable river. The record is a song of loyalty and purity for the angels of light. For the angels of darkness, it is a sign of pride and a path of destruction that goes back to when they first disobeyed. There is no way to change your mind, no way to talk it over, and no way to wait. The final judgment is not a discussion, it is a revelation, the truth that has always been there but has been ignored for a long time. As the scrolls are read, the weight of eternity falls on them, pushing them into the void from which they will never return. The vision of their punishment is full of both scary and beautiful images. Fire that doesn't burn, but holds things. Chains that are not made of iron but of light, made by the Creator's own command. Darkness that is more than just the lack of light. It is a suffocating void, a place where all goodness, beauty, and song are gone. They didn't choose this fate. They made it for themselves with every act of defiance. They used to sing among the stars, but now they cry in the depths of silence. They used to shine with glory, but now they fade into darkness. They are not killed, but separated from the source of life, which will always make them want more and never be satisfied. And yet, in this picture of judgment, there is a strange stillness. The heavens breathe a sigh of relief as the fallen are cast away. Creation itself, which has been hurt by their evil for a long time, starts to heal. The earth doesn't shake anymore because of them, and the skies don't ring with their lies anymore. Taking away the fallen is like lifting a shadow from a valley. The light comes in, and what was hidden for a long time starts to bloom again. Not only is their punishment fair, but it also brings back peace. The order that was broken at the start of the rebellion is now whole again. There is a kind of solemn poetry in the finality of their judgment. It sounds like the universe is singing two notes, one of sadness and one of closure. Sadness for the beauty that was lost when they fell, and for the voices that used to sing in the heavenly choir but are now quiet in the dark. Closure because their rebellion will no longer cause problems for creation. It is the end of a story, the end of an echo that has been going on for a long time. There will be no second fall, and no hidden rebellion will rise. Their fate is set in stone. Enoch saw visions in dreams and wrote about them in words that felt like fire on parchment. He saw the angels who had come down from the mountains and valleys to corrupt people now shaking in front of the throne. He saw the watchers who taught secret things, but now they were quiet and chained up. He saw the powerful who used to walk among men, but now they are weak in the abyss. The punishment was not only losing their freedom, but also losing their identity as beings of light. They had given up their place in the heavens for shadows, and now the shadows were their forever inheritance. The night itself seems to lean closer to this story, as if the stars are listening with respect. There is a lesson in the punishment of the fallen that every soul hears. Pride leads to ruin, rebellion ends in silence, and those who turn away from light will be swallowed by night. But the warning isn't given in anger, it's given in a sleepy, gentle way, as if the universe wants people to stay loyal instead of rebelling. The vision ends with an image that stays in the mind like a dream that is fading. The abyss is closed, the fallen are gone, and their shadows fade away like smoke blown away by the wind. The throne of the Ancient of Days still burns above them. It has been there forever and will never change. It is a reminder that light lasts even when darkness goes away. The angels of light keep singing, and their voices rise like dawn across the sky. The stars seem to echo the chorus. The punishment has been carried out, the judgment has been made, and the balance of eternity has been restored. The last punishment for the fallen angels isn't just about destroying them. It's also about the truth that lasts forever. Darkness can rise, lie, and threaten, but it can't last. In the end, it breaks down into judgment, scattering and binding, and will never hurt again. The dream gets quieter and quieter, and the listener is left with the quiet knowledge that even though shadows may fall long and heavy, they will never last forever. The light never goes away. Under the quiet of heaven, there is a place where sorrow does not exist, where time loses its sharpness and eternity feels like a soft lullaby. The righteous live in a paradise that is not a kingdom of loud trumpets or constant activity, but a place of such deep peace that even the memory of pain fades away. Picture walking into a valley that is bathed in soft golden light, where there are no shadows and no storms. The still waters here flow with a clarity that reflects the sky. They don't move quickly. Instead, they move in a way that feels like breathing. The sound of these waters is more calming than any song. It sounds like a gentle murmur that cradles the soul as if it has finally come home. The trees of life stand like guardians here, their branches heavy with fruit that glows like it has been kissed by the dawn. Their roots go deep into soil that is always wet, and they get their food from a river that flows straight from the heart of the eternal. When you walk among them, you feel like you're being hugged. Their leaves don't whisper about death, they whisper about healing. Their shade doesn't give you a break from the heat, it invites you to rest. These trees are not normal because they promise that the righteous will never have to worry about hunger or thirst again. Every fruit is sweeter than honey, but the taste never goes away because each bite is always satisfying. The air here is different from the air on earth. It is not heavy or fleeting, but it smells like flowers that never die. The scents are soft and blend together like silk threads. They smell like flowers, wood, and incense. But none of them are too strong. The air feels alive, as if it is happy to have the faithful who have traveled through the world of shadows come to see it. No one is crying, no one is complaining, and there are no annoying echoes. Instead, the sound is a mix of soft waters, gentle winds, and voices that aren't crying but are happy. The righteous walk here not as tired pilgrims, but as cherished children. Their clothes don't shine because they want to show off. They shine because they are pure and made of light. Their faces are calm, with no lines from worry or sadness. They move slowly because there is no rush in eternity. Every step feels like gliding over meadows that never lose their green and paths lined with flowers that never fade. To sit here is to feel a comfort that goes beyond sleep, and to get up again is to feel a strength that never fades. No one is alone in this paradise. The righteous don't come together as strangers. They come together as a family that has been apart for a long time and is now back together. They hug each other, and their laughter flows like a fountain, mixing with the sound of the water. There are no fights, no divisions, and no jealousy. The Eternal's presence binds everyone together in harmony, like a melody that brings all souls together into one song. Even the silence here is sweet, because it makes you feel safe knowing that nothing can be lost, broken, or stolen. The light in paradise doesn't come from the sun or moon, because they don't rise and fall. It comes from the Most High, who lives right in the middle of this garden of eternity, not far away. His presence is not a burning fire, but a warm hug that draws you in without fear, like a parent whose love never ends. The good people don't hide, they bask in the sun and feel at peace. His light makes the rivers softer, the trees prettier, and the faces of his children brighter. It is a light that brings peace, not stress, happiness, not fear. Some people say that paradise is a city with golden streets and pearl gates. Some people call it a garden because it is so beautiful and full of life. But in reality, it's both and more. It's a place where everyone knows each other and every tear has been wiped away. Mansions don't rise in pride, they rise in welcome. Each one is carefully made to fit its owner, as if it were made from their very being. No place feels strange, and no space feels empty. Each one is full of the love and laughter of people who are finally whole. Beyond the trees of life, rivers flow into hidden valleys where lakes shine like crystals in the light of eternity. The scales of fish shine with colors that can't be seen on land, and they move like jewels under the surface. Birds glide through the sky, not in a hurry, but in graceful arcs. Their wings are painted in colors that make the soul feel good. Their songs are not cries for help, they are hymns of thanks that are higher than any chorus heard on earth. Even the tiniest blade of grass seems to hum with happiness, happy to be in a world that isn't falling apart. The good people rest on green banks, leaning against trees that look like they've been around forever. They look into the water and see not only their own reflection, but also the story of how they were saved, which reminds them of the long journey that brought them to this safe place. But the memories of pain don't hurt as much anymore. They seem to be seen through a veil of peace. Everything has changed into thankfulness, because every wound healed and every trial faced has brought them to this eternal meadow. There is no hunger in their bellies, no thirst in their mouths, and no fear in their hearts. Death, the great shadow that used to hang over all of us, has no voice here. It seems like the idea of loss has been erased, lost in the light of eternal life. Not in excess, but in perfect harmony. Every need is met and every desire is met. The paradise of the righteous is not just a place, it is a state of being in which the soul is completely at peace with its Creator. And as the night goes on in the mind's eye, the image of paradise becomes more like a dream and more calming. The listener can almost hear the water flowing softly, feel the cool grass under their feet, and taste the fruit that never goes bad. The paradise of the righteous is described not to make people long for it, but to calm them down with a promise that such peace exists, is kept, and waits. The story stays with you like a lullaby, telling you about calm waters, trees full of life, and a comfort that will never go away. The story of the angels trapped in darkness lies like a shadow across time, heavy with the weight of eternity. Their chains are made of more than just iron. They are also made of memories that tie them to choices they can't change. They remind us that even beings of light can fall when they let pride, desire, and rebellion take over. But even in their sadness, there is a strange lesson, a reminder that judgment and mercy are two sides of the same coin. Their eternal bonds serve as both punishment and testimony, a warning inscribed in the silence of the cosmos. To think about them is to feel the stillness of time, which is a reminder that every choice matters and that the eternal sees everything. People say that the valleys of shadow where these watchers live are places without song or warmth, where silence goes on forever. Their cries used to shake the heavens, but now all that is left are echoes, like ripples that have faded on a still ocean. The chains they wear are heavy but can't be seen by people. They are chains of broken trust, broken promises, and broken loyalty. But in that picture of despair, there is a glimmer of hope for humanity. Angels fell and were bound, but people got a second chance. They were carried through flood and fire to a promise that still lives on today. This is the story's paradox. There are always chains, but there is also always hope. One cannot hear about their fall without also hearing about mercy given to others. The faithful who endured, the righteous who held to light, and the promise that a Redeemer would come, all these are the other side of the story. The angels' eternal darkness is set against the light of those who turned to God and found life. Their fate is like a mirror that shows how much it costs to rebel, but it also shows how much grace is a gift that keeps calling out to everyone who hears it. In the silence of this reflect, Ion, the listener, can almost see the huge difference between the two sides. On one side, the watchers are trapped in stone caves with the silence of eternity pressing down on them. On the other side, the waters of paradise flow gently, and the laughter of the righteous fills the air. Both pictures are eternal and will last forever, but they go in different directions. The story of Enoch, which has been kept alive in Ethiopia, has this duality not as a puzzle, but as a revelation. Every choice has a result, every path has an end, and eternity is not made in sudden moments, but in the steady turning of the heart. It doesn't feel like an ending as we finish this long, winding story. It feels more like a soft place to rest. The figures of Azazel, Semjaza, and the others are still tied up, and their story is not over because it goes on forever, beyond human lifetimes. But our story, the story of all people, is still being written. We are the ones who walk paths of light and shadow, choosing each day whether to listen to the voice of pride or the voice of humility. The watchers are a reminder of what happens when even the brightest lights lose their way. And in their chains, we are asked to think about what it means to be faithful and stay close to the one who gives life. Their eternal imprisonment is a sobering thought, but it's not the only one that stays with you. Enoch's visions also talked about hope, about the Son of Man coming to bring justice, restore, and bring peace to the tired. That hope is not lost in the dark. It shines even brighter because of them. The dark angels make the light of redemption stand out more clearly. It reminds us that there is still light in the world, no matter how deep the abyss is. For those who hold on to it, there is no chain that can bind the soul. The story ends softly, like the last notes of a song fading away. The watchers are still in chains, their voices are quiet, and their judgment is final. Humanity goes on, carrying both the warning and the promise. The angels bound in darkness are not just characters from old stories. They are symbols carved into eternity that speak without words. Don't be proud, value humility, and hold on to the light that never goes out. As you drift off to sleep, I ask you to think about this story and let its weight and beauty settle on your heart. If this trip through the Book of Enoch has moved you, tell others about it so they can hear it too. Please help us get to 1,000 subscribers by supporting this work. Leave your name and city in the comments so we can see where this story has gone. Below is a link to the Book of Enoch, which you can read for yourself, as well as the entire Ethiopian Bible, which has been preserved as a treasure of wisdom over the years. May your nights be peaceful, your heart be full of light, and may Jesus bless you richly for every moment you have spent with us in this story.